Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Sophia Pollock. I go by the pronouns she, her, and I'm so excited that everybody was able to come today. We're going to have a great time. I just want to start a quick thing before Sarah does her introductions. My mom always says, love multiplies, it doesn't divide. So this is a safe space for everyone to ask questions and feel heard and wanted. We're so glad that you're here. And with that, I'm just going to pass it off to Sarah. As you can see, the socials and such are on the screen if you want to get more involved as well.
Thank you, Sophia. Hello, my name is Sarah Zhang. I go by she, her pronouns. I am a bisexual Asian who attends CB East as a senior. And I am so happy to be hosting this panel today with the rest of my Youth for Unity organizers and alongside the lovely Marlene Prey from the Rainbow Room. Just before we get started, a few quick technical things. We have two very amazing ASL interpreters here with us today. We have Lynn and Cindy. So for those who are in need of interpretation, you can go to the panelists or the participants column and pin them just so you can see them on your screen at all times when we're chatting or asking questions. And besides that, I think there's also a closed captioning option in case you are also in need of hearing assistance. So besides that, I'm going to pass it on to Marlene.
Hello, thank you. My name is Marlene Prey, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director and founder of the Rainbow Room, and I'm really proud and excited to be here. I just wanted to welcome everyone. We have 54 of us right now, which is incredible, and a lot of Rainbow Room youth. So thank you to all of the youth who come together every Wednesday night for our program, for eagerly welcoming a new format for what we're doing. I wanted to point out that after we finish tonight's panelists and the Q&A, we're going to say bye to everyone that's over 21, and anyone that wants to stay and do what we usually do at the Rainbow Room, which is a check-in. We're going to do our check-in, which is like an in-depth way that we touch base once a week about our emotional and physical and mental health. And then we're just going to offer the same hangout that we do every Wednesday night for Rainbow Room Youth. So I wanted to mention that. I really also wanted to thank all of the panelists for volunteering your time to be here, and to our co-sponsors. We had a lot of different organizations like the NAACP and Rise Up Doylestown and Nova and A Woman's Place, who and the GSA from Neshaminy High School, Glisten of Bucks County, PFLAG, who signed their name on tonight to support us, and also some awesome local businesses in the community. Let's see, the last thing I want to say is that next week for the Rainbow Room, we are also having an innovative program, and it is also open to the entire community. Normally, the Rainbow Room is just ages 14 to 21, but this week it's open to everyone. And next week, it is also open to everyone. And next week is super awesome as well, because we're partnering with the Peace Center for something called a democracy circle. Most of us know that we are living in a time in our nation that not only is vulnerable around COVID and the pandemic, but also of a lot of intense political and social divide. And the Democracy Circle is a process of coming together to communicate about how do we stay resilient in the face of so much division, whether it's in our homes, our schools, our communities. So make sure that you register for that. It's open to everyone. Thepeacecenter.org is where you can get information, or you can ask me, or I'll also post it in the chat. Let's see, was there anything else I was going to say? Oh, the week after that, the Rainbow Room is welcoming back Nick from NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. He is also a member of the LGBT community and an incredible advocate for mental resilience and well-being. And so we're going to be chatting about just like emotional well-being during the holidays. So we hope that that our young people will be here for that. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dan, and I'm going to share the screen, and Dan is going to walk us through some of the Rainbow Room ground rules. So here they come.
All right, hi, I'm Dan Watts. I'm a trans bisexual sophomore at CB West. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight. So for those of you who have attended Rainbow Room either currently or in the past, you know that every week we go over the ground rules. They have not changed very much in the past 19 years, but we slightly altered them for the purposes of this meeting. So I'm just going to do the first one, but then after that, could we have 5 volunteers in the chat that Marlene will call on to read the next ground rules. So respect. Use this tiny text, Marlene. Respect diversity and inclusion. All are welcome here. Be respectful of all races, ethnicities, genders, sexual orientations, ages, disabilities, political beliefs, and perspectives. No hate or violence ever. Respect the leaders, guests, and one another, and the entire space here. Listen to one another. Speak up and speak down. Any mischief in the space or chat, and goodbye. And then just another note on respect. We love to hear everyone's thoughts in the chat. We just want to be respectful, and we don't want to, we just want to be a little bit mindful of how we're using the chat this evening. And as Marlene said, the youth under the age of 21 will have a little check-in after this meeting.
And Miles, you can go ahead and read this one, and then Carson and Julian, and I still need 2 more volunteers. Go for it, Miles.
Be real, be yourself, take care of yourself, don't front, whether you're feeling good or bad, it's okay, just be you, don't yuck other people's yums.
And we all think that Miles should run like a late night, like talk you to sleep talk show, because their voice is so amazing. So we hope you all agree and felt soothed by that. Okay, Carson.
Confidentiality. Wait, hold on, let me zoom in so I can read. Tonight's program is open to the public. It is also being recorded so we can, sorry. So we can expand the impact of our panelists to more people. Even though it's public and open to the community, please be mindful when you see somebody outside of this space. They may not be safe or wish others to know they were here. Hi. One important exception to confidentiality. If you share that you are going to hurt yourself or someone else, Rainbow Room staff are required by law and our own moral compass to work with you to report this and get you help.
Thank you so much, Carson. I'm so glad you're here. Julian, you are going to read the next one, please.
Once in, stay in. Lots of work goes into our event, so please don't leave unless you really need to. If you need to turn your camera off or take a break, please do. If you need to leave early for any reason, please message the host to let us know.
Thank you. And Carter, I'm going to have you read this one, and then I need 1 more volunteer. You can just drop your name in the chat.
Right to pass. We are glad you're here, even if you choose to pass at any time. We are also here to reach our growing edges. This is a brave space, so lean in a bit if you're ready. You can also use the chat to share anything that you don't want to share or can't say out loud for any reason.
Lily, thank you for jumping in. So glad you're here.
No assumptions. Just like at the Rainbow Room, everyone here tonight is encouraged to work actively against stereotyped assumptions based on gender, sexual orientation, sexual health, and behaviors. Some may be currently involved in sexual relationships, others may not. We also work to recognize and question our assumptions about other important parts of identity, including race, class, age, ethnicity, beliefs, education level, and others.
Thank you so much. With that, I am actually going to start off with the first question. Again, for those of you who are just joining, I'm Sophia, and I'm really happy that you're here. The first question is actually going to be open to every panelist. Each panelist is going to answer the question and start with just introducing themselves. Make sure to unmute. that's been a problem for me in the past. So I'm just letting everyone know. So we're going to start off with Betsy, and then I'm going to consecutively call on each person. The question is, what do you love about being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, or an ally to the LGBTQ plus community? So we're going to start off with Betsy.
So I'm Betsy, pronouns they, them. I'm 20 years old and a communications major. And I think what I love about being a part of the community is that there's someone somewhere who's going through the same experience. Also, I'm queer and non-binary. Forgot to add that. But I think when I was first discovering like what it means to be non-binary, I felt like not a lot of other people were experiencing that, but within the community, I found others who were questioning their gender identity or questioning their sexual orientation. So that's probably what I like the most about it.
I love that. Thank you so much. So the next person is going to be Chloe.
Hi, I'm Chloe Weintraub, pronouns they, them. I'm 15 years old and I'm a sophomore at CB West and an organizer and director for Youth for Unity. I think the thing that I love most about being a part of the community is like just meeting all the people who are there to support you. Like through Rainbow Room, I met Marlene, who's like a huge support. And it's just really great because people like her have so many connections to other supports. So I feel like this community is really tightly woven around caring for each other and stuff like that. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chloe. We're going to have Gemma next.
Hi, my name is Gemma. I use she, they pronouns. I'm 16 and I'm a student at the Community College of Philadelphia. Chloe invited me here today. I'd have to say that my favorite part of being queer is like just the experience of it. I feel like the queer community has so much just culture, so much culture, and the way we interact with each other is so intimate, and like Chloe said, it's so caring. And I think that's just such a wonderful thing to get to experience on the daily.
Thank you so much, Gemma. Leon is going to go next.
I'm always so nervous when it's my turn to speak. Hi, my name is Leon Wapecha. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm a child of African immigrants, 20 years old, senior communication major, anthropology minor, Rainbow Room youth, and as active like connector is my term for myself. And I think my favorite, yeah, also known as Leon Plant, my favorite thing about being in our colorful community is the colors, similar to what Betsy said, like being like Black and non-binary, you don't really know a lot of people like that. Like you're not a lot of us are very like visible. And so when I came out like publicly and started going out and meeting other people who are also in the community, I think the biggest thing was it was just really healing because in African cultures, like we don't really talk about like queerness or anything like that openly. So or like at all, or even sex. So meeting other people from different backgrounds that also had the same, like similar struggles or same struggles as me was really like healing for me and helped me a lot with my like confidence and esteem.
Thank you so much. Next up is going to be Maggie introducing themselves.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm 15, bisexual, non-binary, a student at West. I don't know what else to say since I'm not really a part of any special affiliations, but I'm still here. So what I really like about the community itself is that the fact that it truly is a community, like, and not just a group of people that you put together. Like, knowing the amount of people that I do, and sorry, that was my door. Knowing the amount of people that I do and the friends that I've had and the friends that I've made through the community, I think is actually just like really, truly beautiful. And I love people and I love meeting people and I love having things in common with people. And I think that being a part of this group that's kind of like, I don't want to say the underdogs, but we can all relate to some type of struggle. And I think that's really awesome. And I really do think the community is like Gemma had said, so intimate and so just like close with each other. And I really enjoy that about the community.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to have Marlene speak.
Hello, I'm Marlene. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a bisexual woman. And first of all, you all are just so beautiful. Like my computer screen is so gorgeous right now. Like look around. I mean, I'm sure you all, except for James, who I'm pretty sure are you working at Evolution right now? You are, you're amazing. Evolution Candy owner right there. Total support for our community. But this screen is part of what I love about being part of the LGBT community. And I also love the feelings within my own being. I love the attraction that I feel. I love the amazing diverse relationships that I've had in my life because of my my queerness and my sexual attraction. I like how I parent. I have a lot that how I parent. A lot of my parenting strategies kind of flip gender norms on their head, and I really appreciate that. And raising a white, right at the moment, cis, likely straight boy, I take that really seriously. So I really love that part of being a queer partner, and I love that, as Leon told me yesterday, I'm a bit of an enigma. So I like that there's also my own, like a lot of my queerness is very private and not something that a lot of people know about. And that's really special to me. It's actually quite sacred to me. But the community and the like the underdog aspect that you just mentioned, Maggie, you know, like really feeling a connection to vulnerable and marginalized and oppressed people and being part of that struggle. So those are some thoughts I have.
Thank you so much, Marlene. Next up, we have Dr. Norma Jean Johnson, who is my mom. So if you think you're seeing double, it's because we're related.
There, I just unmuted. Hi, I'm Norma Jean Johnson, and my name is really long, so it didn't fit, but I'm hyphenated, Villanueva. I am a Puerto Rican emergency physician, and my pronouns are she, her. What I love most about being an LGBTQ ally is being a proud supporter of my daughter, who is a bisexual youth.
All right, great. And just to thank you, Mom, or Dr. Johnson. And just to finish it off, we're going to have Mayor Strauss finish us off.
And I'm taking a little latitude with the directions given. And I thought I would give you the condensed version of my journey in terms of my professional journey and how it intersects with being a member of the LGBTQ community. And as some of you probably know, my first substantial job in Washington was a legislative assistant and chief of staff in the House of Representatives. Extremely closeted. The times required that. And the fact that I had a security clearance also required that. And I can tell you that at that time, all the friends that I knew that were part of the LGBTQ community were also closeted. We formed a kind of informal, I'll call it an informal mafia that were part of the staff of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And that actually included 2 members of the House of Representatives, 2 congressmen who were also closeted and remained so for their entire professional career. So after that, moving back to Bucks County where I had grown up, my partner and I went to chef school and trained as a chef, and we had a couple of restaurants together for over 20 years. Again, never really coming out, but never really hiding who we were at the same time. People could make assumptions or not. That didn't seem to matter to us, or it didn't seem to matter to our friends and my family. I never really focused on a conversation of coming out with my family in that way until 20 years ago when I was the Democratic candidate for Congress in Bucks County, the first openly gay candidate for Congress in Pennsylvania. Needless to say, I didn't win, but I was obviously an openly gay candidate at that time. And then now, for the last 7 years, being mayor of Doylestown. Being mayor of Doylestown and also being a member of the LGBTQ community has provided me an opportunity to actually go back to my roots of working in Washington and lobby on behalf of LGBTQ issues that I probably would never have been able to do if I wasn't also a mayor. And also a mayor in the state of Pennsylvania that lacks protections for the LGBTQ community. So now, as part of a variety of organizations that argue for the civil rights for the LGBTQ community, I'm able to participate in lobbying efforts with Congress. I'm able to participate in what are called amicus briefs that are filed with the Supreme Court on behalf of the issues for the LGBTQ community that come up before the Supreme Court. Those kinds of things provide me an opportunity I would have never had if not for that background and if not for being mayor now. So I find great satisfaction in being able to participate at that level. Thanks.
If I could just putting up your page there, Ron, from the Borough of Doylestown.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all that you do.
We're going to exchange interpreters. If you could just give us a second.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
So now I'm just gonna make sure that Sarah knows that she's about to go, and she's gonna start asking questions and opening it up to all of our panelists.
Perfect. So our second question is more open to our panelists that are part of the queer community. So how has your queer identity shaped your perspectives, whether it be in school, in the workplace? Does anyone want to speak to that?
So the panelists can go ahead and just unmute yourself and jump right in. So will you read the question one more time, Sarah?
Yeah, of course. How has your queer identity shaped your perspective?
I'll go if no one else wants to. I think it can shape my perspective in like a really positive way and a really negative way. Like it can be negative just because of the complete lack of representation, because there are not a lot of like queer and trans people in the media, and along with that, like I identify as non-binary, and that is just not talked about. I feel like there's only like you're either cis or you're a trans man or woman, and that's always been really hard for me to like figure out my identity because I just didn't have the resources to learn about it. But a positive thing is that we're so tightly woven that it's very easy to like find the good news and the good things that happen with our community. Like there is a lack of representation, but then we have people like Mayor Strauss, where it's like a queer person in a position of power who's advocating for us from our perspective, and I think that's really cool.
Does anyone else want to share? Again, the question is, how has your queer identity shaped your perspective? And we're trying to keep this more conversational. So if you want to pitch in, just pitch in.
I agree with you, Chloe. It can definitely be like a double-edged sword. Like I feel like my queer identity it sort of has made it easier for me to meet new people in the way that like I feel like there are people who automatically like will sort of understand me and where I'm coming from especially if I'm in a specifically queer space. So I love being able to connect with people so easily in that way. Um, but also, as Chloe stated, there's so little representation in media, especially for queer and trans people of color. Um, and Sometimes it's it's very hard for me to even understand like my identity and where I'm coming from. So I feel um, my queer identity can both make me feel very at home, but also like very confused.
Thank you so much for those who shared.
Sophia, can I jump in with just a quick thought?
Of course.
Okay, so this is not something I would have expected to answer, and I helped you all bring the questions together that people had submitted online. So this is just coming to me right now, which is that my identity as a sex educator and as a advocate and worker of Planned Parenthood, and also as an outdoor educator, I'm absolutely enamored and in love with nature and with earth-centered learning and spirituality. And that my identity and my perspective around that are also very queer. Like they're very turning things on their head, looking at the inside and sides of things. So I just think that it's just such a refreshing way to look at even nature, to look at nature and understand this is not something that just fits in a box. And at the same time, there's so much science to be studied and understood. So I just love that place where that intersects, and that feels like sexuality and nature and even understanding political systems and communities are all places where queer perspective is revolutionary and refreshing. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Does anyone want to add on that before I go on to the next question? All right. The next question is, and anyone can answer this, but we do want to center our people of color within this panel, of course. How do you, as a member of the queer community, uplift and center Black, Indigenous, people of color voices and issues every day in your life and in your work?
Could you read it again, Sophia? And I know Ava is going to type it in the chat too.
Yeah, of course.
These amazing questions twice.
It's a lengthy one, so of course. How do you, as a member of the queer community, uplift and center Black, Indigenous, other people of color voices and issues every day in your life and within your work?
So I'll just go first. As like a member of said acronym, I like make a conscious effort to collaborate with other, like for example, like to speak to like Black people specifically, other Black people when I'm doing because I do film. So when I'm doing like films, I go out of my way to try and collaborate with other Black creators. When I'm doing like photography, things like that. Like I have a YouTube channel as well. And then in terms of with Indigenous voices, I don't know as much about them. So I always am looking for more information. So just educating myself more first on their unique problems. And then as terms like for other people of color, like my anthropology focus is East Asian studies. So I focus a lot on studying specifically like Korean and Chinese history. And I just came back from studying abroad in South Korea, just came back like last month. And while I was there, I was working directly with the queer community in Seoul, like with drag queens and interviewing Korean non-binary people and other things like that.
Does anyone else want to share? Again, the question is, how do you, as a member of the queer community, uplift and center Black, Indigenous people of color? We'd love to hear at least one more thought before we move on to the next question.
I have a thought. Hello, my name is Kevin. I'm a little bit older than most of you here. But I'm going to flip the question around if that's okay. And I do primarily work with racial justice, but I don't end it there. I don't really see a distinction between standing up for racial justice and standing up for queer justice or LGBTQ justice. That said, I know that in my generation and in my demographic, as Leon, I believe it was, touched on earlier, in some cultures, it's not as acceptable. LGBTQ plus lifestyle is not as acceptable and it's not as accepted. So as a Black cis man, I do everything I can to make sure to overrepresent the support for LGBTQ plus people. I don't really see a distinguishing line between racial justice and between that.
I really like that point. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing.
Perfect. Moving on to our next question. I might aim this a little bit at Mayor Strauss as he works in a governmental position. But our next question is, how do we engage more LGBTQ youth in political activism and social change? What do you believe is the next step forward for LGBTQ and reproductive rights? And then piggybacking off of that, how do we hold elected officials accountable for the progression of LGBT rights?
Well, let me make some very personal political comments about the environment we find ourselves in now and where we find ourselves maybe on January of this year. I think you can make a strong argument that for the last few years, we've looked to the Supreme Court to step up and support the expansion of civil rights. That certainly was the case in the LGBT community with marriage equality, and we can point to some other decisions of the Supreme Court. That probably is not going to be the case going forward the way it was historically. I mean, we all expect the Supreme Court will be a more conservative court. For instance, there was a case tried, oral arguments, the day after the election in the US Supreme Court. And that is a case called Fulton versus Philadelphia. It's a case where I joined with other mayors and filed what's known as an amicus brief. And let me try to describe that case very, very briefly. And that is, in Philadelphia, the city government uses private and other nonprofits to do some of the social services that the city provides. In this case, the city was using religious organizations, specifically the Catholic Church, to provide for foster homes for children within the city. The Catholic Church was not providing foster homes in the LGBTQ community. So the city said that that is against the city's discrimination ordinances. And so the city fails to provide for contracts with the Diocese of Philadelphia. That actually merged into this Supreme Court case that was heard the day after the election. So it is a somewhat classic argument about civil rights for the LGBTQ community and civil rights for the religious community, and the city coming in between. There's an anticipation that maybe that will be decided in a very different way than it might have been a couple of years ago with a different Supreme Court. So that's a very difficult environment going forward. On the other hand, going forward, we have a different president coming in. Regardless of what some people say, he is going to be inaugurated. And in his first 100 days, most presidents focus on 100 days and what they want to accomplish in the first 100 days. In his first 100 days, one of the things he's promised to accomplish is to get the Congress to pass non-discrimination legislation regarding the LGBTQ community. That legislation passed the House in the last session, but did not pass the Senate. So that is an example of an effort where you have the president behind it, where that was not the case for the last 4 years. And frankly, I think young people like yourselves can play a pivotal role in arguing and lobbying for that kind of legislation. I'm part of a Mayors Against LGBTQ Discrimination and Freedom for All Americans, and we sent a letter to Congressman actually today, arguing in behalf of that legislation in advance of those first 100 days next year. But the real issue for you as Pennsylvanians probably rests with our one senator, Senator Toomey. And to be very honest, you've shown yourselves to be very accomplished lobbyists on behalf of issues that are meaningful and that are important, and that you can weigh in with. The example might be gun safety a couple of years ago. So I guess I'm going to suggest to you that one of the things that you can do that perhaps you haven't done yet is actually ask for a meeting with our senator. Not easily arranged, but it might be 3 months down the pike or something like that. Obviously, then you need to prepare for it pretty carefully, but ask for a meeting to lobby on behalf of that kind of an issue. You can also do it on behalf of your congressman, your senator, your other senator, Senator Casey, but the pivotal vote is Senator Toomey. On the state level, again, we don't have a legislature that's very friendly toward passing non-discriminatory legislation, but they are more receptive, I think, to hearing from young people than sometimes hearing from someone like me who they've heard all too often from. You have a couple colleagues, a couple members of the LGBTQ community that in Harrisburg that can be helpful in this effort. One is Malcolm Kenyatta from Philadelphia, who I think very highly of, who's a very eloquent spokesperson of color, a member of the LGBTQ community, fairly newly married. I would suggest that you connect with him and find ways then to lobby and connect with our legislators in Harrisburg. It's a very long answer, but I think there are opportunities and new, fresh opportunities for you to be involved in a very meaningful way to see legislation occur.
Thank you, Mayor Strauss. That was really helpful. Next, I'm going to direct this same question again to the youth. So as I mentioned, I am one of the organizers for Youth for Unity, and we have done so much work over the past year with organizing protests for police brutality, for Black Lives Matter. So do any of the youth on this panel want to speak to their experiences, maybe with rallies, with organizing, or with any kind of community protests?
I think on this, like, I'm not obviously like directly affiliated with Youth for Unity or like organizing protests and such, but just from experience as an active participant who tries to spread the word and engage more people, I think the biggest issue I find when trying to spread awareness for issues or to bring people to protest is that a lot of people, I guess like maybe our generation, because we have like our whole 24 news cycle and everything, we don't feel a lot of urgency about things. And so I think when it comes to, especially when you find out how slow the actual like legislative process is, we don't feel a lot of urgency to things. And we feel like things are just kind of like, we feel like the situation is already so bad that there's no point even trying to fix it kind of feeling. And I feel like that gets kind of been passed on from the millennials to us, that feeling of like defeatism. And so I think that it's really important first to create that sense of urgency that what we do matters and we can do it right now, and it will start something that will spark change. And then the other thing is, I think, to really push the intersectionality piece to it, because a lot of people feel like it doesn't affect them. And if it doesn't directly affect them, then there's no reason for them to be so concerned. And that helps with them not having that feeling of urgency, that feeling of needing to go out and do the work to get people informed and protest and get things signed and such and such.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially because you might ask some straight cis white politicians, like, what are you doing to make sure that the trans and the queer community feel safe in like the local community? And I think a lot of them will say, like, especially here in Bucks County, that, you know, it's not that bad, or like hate crimes don't happen, stuff like that, when it's really something that you have to look for. And I feel like a lot of people have the mentality of like, well, if you look for it, then you're always going to find something. Like, that's the point, because we deserve to feel safe. Like, the people who are harassing people like me, people like us, are coming from a place of privilege because they know that they're not going to get caught. So I feel like it's up to the people in positions of power to listen to us and to be educated by us, and also hold themselves accountable and educate themselves, like not rely on me to tell them everything about being non-binary or bisexual, to do their own research. So I think that's really important for them, to just look out for things that they would never experience on their own.
I just want to add to that last part where you were saying that you don't want to have to be the one to tell everybody everything about your identity. That is so important. Like, that is, I think about that all the time. Like, if I'm, because I try to make it a point to try and like educate people if they ask me a question about, you know, sexuality or just like identity in general. So like when it becomes like a chore to have to explain your own identity to someone, because it's like at one point you just sit back and you're like, you have the internet at your fingertips, dude. Like, you can easily educate yourself and be a good ally if you really wanted to take time and learn about who I am and who these people are and what this community stands for. Like, you gotta have your own, like, you gotta go on your own and like look at who I am if you truly care, because I can't always be here and like school you on who I am and who like I think I'm like I want to be and stuff.
Definitely agree. Thank you guys so much, or thank you all so much for sharing. Now I'm going to pass it on to Sophia for our next question.
All right, yeah. So again, this is open to all of our panelists. Don't be shy.
I'm sorry, can we just take a second to switch interpreters, please?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Thank you.
Also, I have a question. There was a question put in the chat. Are we going to speak about that? It was direct to the students in the panel. Do you want us to talk about that like here, or type it in the chat?
In regard to what students can do to hold elected officials accountable?
Or was it the one about schools?
It was the one about like school boards.
There's a lot of, school board. Okay. So there's a lot of comments in the chat that were responding to things in schools. And I know if you're speaking, you're probably not reading the chat, so you might not have seen some of them. I would say you could throw it in there. What do you think, Sarah? And if we have time, we'll jump back into it.
Yeah, I think it would be great if the panelists, if you're looking at the chat, if you want to go ahead and respond to some of those, you can. And then we will also save a few live questions for the end if we have time, although it looks like we're already halfway through and we have still a few questions left. So we'll just see what happens.
Only because it's been mentioned just now in terms of schools and school boards. There's an opportunity right now. We have our representative on the Central Bucks School Board from this area is resigning at the end of the year. So there will be a vacancy there. The school board actually appoints the replacement, and then that person is probably going to run for the position of school board in the next election. But during the interim, the school board appoints the replacement. And as we speak, applicants to serve on the school board are being accepted by the school superintendent's office. That's a very, very specific opportunity to see that the candidates that apply are sensitive to the issues that are important to you and to your safety in the school system. So it's a very specific opportunity and a very specific amount of time where you'd have to, act and exercise your influence right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for that call to action. That is really important that we get involved locally just as much as we pay attention to national politics as well, because Sarah says this a lot, but everything starts at the local level. So I am going to go to the next question, and this is for all of our panelists. Just what words of wisdom do you have for the LGBTQ plus youth today, or people who are still, figuring themselves out? And just maybe speak about your own experiences coming out or dealing with the confusion that is identity sometimes.
I think the most important thing to know is just it's okay to be unsure, and it's okay to have no clue what's going on inside your head concerning your identity. When I first figured out I was bisexual, I was really scared, but then I was really happy because I had finally, I don't know, it felt really comforting to finally have that piece of who I am. But also some people can find labels constricting, and maybe they don't have any labels that will really fit right, which I think is why LGBTQ plus and queer are both great umbrella terms. So it's just okay to not know everything about yourself, and just understanding that whatever you're feeling is valid, and whatever you're feeling is real concerning your sexuality, concerning your gender, is just super important. Yeah.
So I'd love to touch on this as well. I think what a lot of people don't realize is gender and sexual orientation are a spectrum and they're fluid. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that it's okay to change your identity throughout. I've probably used every label in the book at this point. And then I realized that I don't need a label. Like at the end of the day, I'm Betsy, and that's all that really matters. And I feel like a lot more people should realize that. If you don't know if you're this or that in between or elsewise, you can just say it doesn't matter. Like you don't need something to conform to. And I also feel like a lot of people need to realize that it's for you and you do not owe anyone an explanation of your identity. If someone wants to try to question you about anything, you can shut them down and just know that you yourself accept who you are, and that's the only validation you truly need. So
I think it's also about knowing that you're enough, and again that you're valid, because I've felt a lot being in the different minority groups that I'm in. I'm hard of hearing, so being disabled, I'm worried what if I'm not disabled enough, or when I thought that I was a girl, I'm not feminine enough, or being non-binary, I'm not trans enough, bisexual, I'm not queer enough. It's a constant struggle, but there's also a way to just remind yourself that, again, you don't owe anyone an explanation, and sometimes there just isn't one. You're just who you are, and that is enough, and that is just your life at the end of the day, and it's worth taking care of yourself and just accepting yourself.
Thank you all so much for sharing that. And on to our next question. The next question is going to be in regards to sexuality education. So, how do you believe that sex education should be addressed in schools? And how does Planned Parenthood play a role in education? Is there anything else that you believe outside of abstinence-based sex education that we should be working towards? So I'm going to direct this question more towards Marlene and Mayor Strauss. I know you both have worked with Planned Parenthood in the past, and maybe Dr. Johnson as well.
I actually love Alexa just responded, we should actually have sex ed. Yeah, that would be a start. It's one of the things I wanted to start with is if anyone can get your fingers on your keyboard and type out, what do you remember or what are you currently learning in your sex ed classes in like middle school, high school? What are some of the topics that were taught to you? So think about the topics, think about the messages. What were the messages? Don't have sex was the first one. No sex ed. No sex is good. Abstinence. It's literally all abstinence. That's it. I'm reading the comments, by the way. They didn't teach us how to have, they didn't teach us, oh my gosh, you all are typing so fast. Only straight sex. Sex is bad. Empty, head empty, no thoughts. Oh, only gay people can get AIDS. Yeah, abstinence is the only true form of sexual activity. They just showed us what a baby is. I can't remember a single thing I learned. Never had sex ed. Exempt from gym. So that's really interesting, getting like exempt from gym and that suddenly that's the place where we get sex ed. Yeah, and consent. Someone actually got taught about consent, which is totally amazing and important. Yeah, we learned at Penridge, sex with other people is sex with hundreds of other people they had sex with. Yes, and there's these very dramatic activities that people do where with chewed up gum and like tainted water to show you like, these are all the germs. Yeah, very, very sex negative stuff. So sex is only to make babies. Thank you, Carson. Gender and sexuality are the same thing, often just lumping it all together. Yeah, and now I'm going to ask, what do you think should be taught in sex ed? So go ahead and type that out. What priorities, what topics, what messages, like maybe not even a topic, but what's a message that if you were sitting there and in a sex ed class, a teacher said it, you would be like, oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. And yeah, so, and just so much validation from all of you about this total void around contraception or emotional intimacy. So I'm looking, there's so much stuff here. Consent, sex is okay. Consent, safe sex. Talking about disabilities, proper protection. Not everyone is straight. No shame in being sexually active. Proper birth control. Healthy legal abortion options. Self-care. That LGBTQ plus exists. They should probably assume that teenagers will have sex, even if they say it's bad. Definitely. Different contraceptives, masturbation is normal, protection for queer sex in general, fries. Yeah, Leon coming up with the acronym about consent. Separation of gender and sexuality. Yeah, what's up with, let's start to actually pull these things apart. How to have sex or masturbate, some of the actual like, here's how these things happen. Here are the functional ways that the body actually works. And just like we learn about how all the other systems of the body function, those are so much important stuff. Yeah. Learning about pleasure and learning about some really specific things like how when children are born, they are assigned a gender at birth. And what does that mean? And what does it mean to use those terms like Betsy put in there, like AFAB? And then also just so much of the conversation that we hear about pleasure is just about cisgender and heterosexual men. So yeah, protection for queer couples, that ACE is a thing. So being asexual, that's a reality. Not having a sexual attraction is also a sexual orientation. And yeah, okay, so much good stuff. Keep writing, keep reading. I will just say that there is not a school district in Bucks County that, and very few, actually, I don't know of any in all of Pennsylvania that offer what we call in the field of professional sex ed, comprehensive sexuality education. So that is like the goal for those of us that are doing this work. And I did my doctoral work at Widener in human sexuality education. That's my passion. It's an amazing career. It's such an exciting field to be in, filled with a lot of issues around and important dynamics around intersectionality and certainly LGBTQ plus dynamics and issues. Planned Parenthood plays a huge role in this. I'm just going to try to keep this short, and I want to hear what Ron also wants to bring in, which is going to be awesome. So Planned Parenthood is one of the largest providers of sex ed in the country. It's certainly one of the primary ones in Pennsylvania, where we still have some funding and still exist as an organization. The Rainbow Room is funded and run by Planned Parenthood. We started in the basement of Planned Parenthood in Doylestown 19 years ago. And Planned Parenthood has 3 different things that it does. It provides medical care, education, and advocacy. So the education piece is very important. Training parents on how to talk to your kids about sexuality. Parents are actually the primary educators of their children around sexuality. That is a quote from Planned Parenthood. It's one of our strongest beliefs and understandings and scientific realities is that kids listen to their parents, whether that's shame-based and filled with misinformation and dangerous information, or whether it's comprehensive and medically accurate and age appropriate. So and getting this is, I wrote my dissertation on this, so I don't want to take any more time reading it to you right now. But this is really also a unique position that the United States is in. We have a culture of purity and a culture of denying pleasure, and this culture of the binary that is really problematic and shows up in our sex education in pretty big ways. I will just say it's a cornerstone of the Rainbow Room. So if you're between the ages of 14 and 21, we are one of the places where you can go for it, and it's free and it's for everyone within that age range. You can also advocate for that within your school, and you can communicate those concerns to your teachers, to your school boards, to your principals, to your heads of school, depending on what kind of school you go to. And there's some actually really great websites for it. There's some horrible ones too. So I'm going to be quiet and see if I can find some good websites and put them in the chat. So thank you.
I don't think there's much I can add to what Marlene's already said, although I think you could take all those comments from the chat room, remove everyone's identity, and send them to individual members of the school board. They probably would go all unhinged, but they all should hear that. But at the end of the day, it is the school board that determines what is taught. It's the school board that determines what kinds of textbooks are chosen to be used in the school. And so there again, it is those members, those individual members of the school board that we need to talk to on a regular basis. Probably not just at the regular school board meeting, where you stand up at a microphone and make a statement. That has a purpose. I'm not saying that, but I mean, you need to have members of the school board that join in those private conversations, those quiet conversations with other members of the school board and with the school superintendent, and talk about this very thing. And I'm not sure they talk about it, and I'm not sure that you have an advocate on the school board right now. So that's really, it's a challenge and an opportunity. I mean, Central Bucks is, the 3rd largest school district in Pennsylvania, and it has lots of reasons to be proud of the work they do. This is certainly not one of them. So, thanks.
Just to add, a positive school climate It's associated with decreased depression, suicidal feelings, substance abuse, and school absences. And I think that an educated student body really helps make the school a safe place. And if sex ed is where all this is discussed, then sex ed it is. And it's really important to really discuss this not as a hush hush or like, oh my goodness. And, this is all normal. This is just a normal part of being human beings. And, separating the boys from the girls because some things, girls can't listen to or boys can't listen to. I mean, I'm assuming here because of course I didn't get to hear what the boys heard, in their class, but I'm assuming they were taught about wet dreams and, and those things and how that is so normal for the men to have, but, women have those too. So it just, I think a large part of sex ed is really creating a safe place at school.
Yeah, I completely agree. So just another question directed to Dr. Johnson, our expert on the panel, but there's, she's like, what? So what is, just could we have a definition of what HIV AIDS is? And then if you could just delve into more of what the priorities today, just kind of what the environment is around HIV AIDS right now within your medical profession, and what you do in the ER regarding that and other sex education tools that you use.
So HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus, and it's one of the sexually transmitted infections that you can get with sex. It used to be, a death sentence back in the 80s and 90s when I was young and in school. There was not a lot known about it. There was a lot of fear surrounding it. HIV has 3 stages: the acute stage, the chronic stage, and then, of course, the AIDS stage, which is the final stage, which is a acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, and that's when the virus has weakened the immune system so much that you can't fight opportunistic infections, and most people were dying from opportunistic infections like pneumonias and cancers. Now you can have HIV and lead, a pretty healthy life. You can be on therapy that decreases the viral load so that you won't pass it to your partner. And there are treatments like PrEP, so pre-exposure prophylaxis, that you can use if you're worried about being exposed to HIV. So there's a lot of really positive things that have come about for persons with HIV, which is wonderful. But one of the things with HIV/AIDS in the 80s and 90s, I think that there was a lot of talk around just sexually transmitted infections in general, and I think that's died down a bit. You still have to think about that. You still have to think that there's a lot of things that you can get, not only HIV, there's chlamydia, there's gonorrhea, which are bacterial infections, there's other viruses like human papillomavirus, which I think most of the young people here have had the vaccination, so that's not so much of an issue for you. Herpes, hepatitis, but all these things, if you're aware of them and prepare to have safe sex, then a lot of these things can be avoided, and you can have, a healthy, normal sexual life.
I just want to add to that also, that was so much good information, that there is a tremendous amount of stigma about infection. And, you know, like herpes is a skin infection. It's a skin infection. Like there, and you know, we estimate that somewhere around 20% of people will have it in the adult population. Like these are things that are often manageable, and certainly thank goodness for science and for medical experts and for activists that pushed medical experts to do their jobs. And there's a lot, we talked about this last week at the Rainbow Room, it was our topic. And we looked at some of the current climate around the coronavirus and some of the activism that happened around HIV and AIDS, and that it was not necessarily, I mean, not at all, it was actually fought against by people who were elected, people who had access to funding and to science and to medication. So I also just, one of the things we talk about at the Rainbow Room is certainly addressing the stigma of having an infection. All of us have different infections, and all of us have different forms of HPV that are living in our bodies. Some might produce genital warts, some might produce warts on our hands or feet. It's pretty common. So not to say like these aren't risks, but here's how to have sex. Here's how to have sex with yourself. Here's how to get the right protection. Here's how to talk about it. Here's how to, you know, how to be consensual with a partner, not just about what feels good, but also about your own status around being tested or having an infection or a virus. So I really appreciate the space here to be able to talk about this stuff, because these are things that I will tell you, when I got the curriculum home from my kiddo from 6th grade in Central Bucks, it said that AIDS equals death and that sex equals AIDS. And the description of the female genitalia did not include the clitoris. You know, this is like, these are serious choices that were made by, as Ron pointed out, as the mayor pointed out, by the curriculum committee of the school board. So yeah, I just wanted to jump in with how important, how this connects to all of the other things we've been talking about: political activism, raising your voice, you know, finding a supportive community that will love you and accept you and protect you, and not bring stigma. I'm so glad also to see so much of the conversation in the chat. And I'm so thankful that part of what the recording of tonight's panel also includes recording that chat, so that we can hold on to that information without your names, of course. And I love your idea, Ron. I think it would shock them quite deeply to see a list, but really, like, here's a list of what young people want to learn about. So I love it. It also is going to make me a better sex educator and a better, you know, educator at the Rainbow Room. So keep it coming.
To the extent we've been successful in addressing AIDS, and we have, I mean, it's based on our embracing science. It's not unlike the environment we find ourselves in right now with the pandemic. I mean, the argument that we need to embrace science to find a solution to a problem, well, that took a long time as we worked our ways through the AIDS epidemic. You know, in my generation, most members of the LGBTQ community will know someone that passed away. In my case, I have a nephew that passed away from AIDS when he was 21 years old. That would not happen today. And it's as a result of science that we can say it would not happen today. But it's just another indication of how important embracing science is.
The other thing I wanted just to mention is confidentiality. As a teenager, you can get tested for sexually transmitted infections and get treated, and your parents don't have to know. So it's really important to know that, you know, you don't have, it's not, you know, it's not shameful, and it's, you know, and, you know, to go get help, and that your parents won't necessarily find out, which is, I think, leads to a lot of people not seeking medical help.
That was an amazing discussion. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Before the next question, we just needed to change interpreters, please.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Perfect. So that was an amazing discussion between the three of you all. And now we're going to move into our final question for all of the panelists before we open it up to our audience for live questions. So our final question is, who or what empowers you? So we're going to start off with Betsy.
Okay, so what empowers me is knowing the impact of individuals. I think it's empowering to know that there's so many people in the world that I've yet to meet, and so many people who haven't met me, and how in an instant they can completely change your perspective. So how it relates to my queer and gender identity would be, I never knew other non-binary people existed, and then I found them. And I think self-discovery is very important, and having other people discover themselves in you is very important. So I feel like that's very empowering. Like for me, I'm on social media a lot, and I'm an advocate for a lot of marginalized communities, and having people reach out to me and be like, I didn't know what this was until you explained it, is very empowering. So
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing. Next, we're going to move on to Chloe.
I don't even know where to start because there is so much. I guess I'm gonna go back to kind of what I said at the very beginning, just the community itself. Like my friends like Gemma and Maggie, like they always support me and I support them. Important to know and acknowledge that the people in this community, whether we're out, closeted, ever, like we have a choice every day to go up and like face the world and do what we have to do, no matter how many people hate us and just deny our right to exist. We still get up and we still do it. And we have so much to mourn for and so much to work for, and we're still constantly doing it. And I think that's just really beautiful because we're making the most out of like kind of a horrible situation. We're making it into something beautiful, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Chloe, for sharing. Next, gonna move on to Gemma.
I agree with like just everything Chloe said. Like I feel like the thing that empowers me most is definitely my friends, because we like support each other through maybe confusion or insecurity about gender and sexuality, and we also empower each other's gender and sexuality, and it feels so nice when like my friends like use my correct pronouns or just like mention something about me being like non-binary or bisexual, and I love doing that for my friends. And it's just like this really wonderful feeling of love and acceptance. Yeah.
Definitely agree. Thank you so much for sharing. Next, I'm gonna direct the question towards Leon.
Again, so when I think of the people that empower me as, again, film major, so a lot of them are actors and directors like Billy Porter, Janelle Monáe, Amber Hikes, who used to work in Philadelphia, and now is living in New York, Ryan Murphy, India Moore, and they are really important because representation in the media is really important to me, and I'm really passionate about it. And then also all of Rainbow Room Youth and the regular student activists that go out of their way to, like, they could be doing, any kind of club activities or sports, something like that, but instead they choose to go out of their way to be marching, to going down to the city or leading local marches or protests and things and like signing petitions and sitting through boring school board meetings and town halls and all those kinds of things. And I don't always have the opportunity to do those things or be a part of those. I really appreciate that and feel like some people maybe take those people for granted a little bit, the grassroots organizing section. So all those people inspire me, but my biggest like inspirations is to be one of those people that is in the media representing our community and our different identities for the young ones to look up to and see on TV.
Thank you. That was very powerful. Next, I'm gonna go to Maggie.
I think I feel most empowered when I'm with like-minded people who share my beliefs and opinions on like my community and everything like that. Because in areas like that, it really gives you the opportunity to just speak your mind and have like intense and like great discussions with people and expand your horizons and really just like get to learn. Because like in the community, I'm always learning something. Like there's always something to be learned and something to be taught and respected. So I feel empowered when I'm able to teach and be taught about the community.
For sure. Thank you so much. And now I'm gonna go to the lovely Marlene.
Wow. So it's one of those moments where I was listening so intensely that I didn't formulate my answer. What empowers me? Well, it's been a rough several years. So I'm like thinking right in this moment, in the times when I feel most strained and defeated and alone and scared and hurt and hopeless, because I felt a lot of those things a lot, for a lot of different reasons. And I feel a lot more sense of my own power when I speak up, when I speak up when I'm scared, because even though I'm loud a lot of the time, like not just volume wise, but I speak up, I'm scared a lot of the time. And when I do that, that's a feeling of empowerment for me. I mean, I felt empowered by leaving bad relationships and by really holding my like 13-year-old accountable around how he talks to me. And I felt empowered when I show up at Snowflake Corner in Doylestown at State in Maine. That's what the right wing is calling it, Snowflake's Corner. Woo! And I feel empowered when I show up there and I see someone like Kevin standing there looking around for the protest that was canceled. What's up, Kevin? Or, I mean, so many of you, like, you know, I see, you know, our DA walk through a Black Lives Matter protest and come up and say hi to me and ask how things are going. And, you know, James brings a bunch of cookies to us from Evolution Candy. And, you know, a bunch of us get up and try to sing a song to lift ourselves over the devastation of knowing there's children dying in cages in our country. Like, I feel empowered when we come together, and I feel empowered when I get a text from one of you that things that you're either having a hard time or that, you know, I'm having a hard time, and we just connect as human beings and find that place in our humanity. And then on a very like different level, I just need to sometimes go out without my shoes on and put my feet on the earth and like remember where I am in a galaxy. So, and look out at the stars and know that I'm made of that same amazing stuff that they are, which is like science. So there's my answer.
Thank you, Marlene. That was very sweet. Now I'm going to move on to Dr. Johnson.
Obviously, I feel most empowered when I'm surrounded by the people I love who accept me for who I am. When I'm horrible and cranky and haven't slept after night shift and all I want to do is sleep all day, or, you know, I'm happy, you know, regardless of how I am or who I, you know, or what me I'm being, I'm accepted. And I think acceptance is a big part of empowerment. I also feel empowered when I come together with other people to, you know, help others just be outside myself. And I get a lot of that at work, and a lot of just, you know, paying it forward.
For sure. Thank you so much. And finally, to Mayor Strauss.
Of course, I feel empowered by family and friends. Of course, most of all, the ones that would tend to agree on issues with me. But I also feel empowered by members of the LGBTQ community who do exceedingly good work at whatever they do. I'll say the Rachel Maddows of the world. I mean, I feel empowered by them. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going to direct it to the lovely Miss Sophia to ask some of the live questions. And we're also going to be opening this up completely to the audience. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you just want to drop one in the chat, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who wanted to learn with us today and signed up and made that initiative. That empowers me and makes me feel whole. So thank you. And so we're just going to open up the chat now. If you want to direct a specific question to a panelist, you can say their name. Or if you want to just say a question to everyone, you can either put that in the chat and I will find that and ask, or if you want to unmute yourself, that would be really helpful for me, and let your voice be heard to ask someone as well. So it's open to everyone. The first question that I see is in the chat. We're not going to get to everything, unfortunately. I wish we could. So this is from Alexa. The older generation of speakers, what is the biggest thing you want LGBTQ plus youth to know about the community or about history? So that it's a two-parter. So let's start with the older generation of youth, or not of youth, the older generation of our panel.
I also want to clarify that older generation to me is just anybody not in my generation. It doesn't actually mean you're old. It's just, I feel like I'm very connected to people in my generation who are like queer LGBTQ plus, but I haven't gotten to hear much from people who are not. So I'd love to hear what like your guys' experiences have been like.
Yeah, that's a great question, Alexa.
Well, I'll say, I feel like Ron really spoke to some very heartfelt, important things around that, and that I can certainly relate to in some, in my own personal ways of watching people suffer and die from things like HIV and AIDS, and not knowing a single out, trans person for a lot of my life, my younger life, and not meeting someone who is non-binary, or even having that expression to understand. So I'm just thinking about something to know about. Well, to know about the community is different than to know about the history. But I also think that like pride and queerness is not just something that's like a bunch of rainbows and a bunch of flags. It is like internalizing that and finding that pride and what that means inside of oneself can be miles apart from like being the most active, out, proud, rainbow wearing, pride parade leading activist. That quiet knowing, fierce knowing inside is also something that is deeply important. And I think about my sister, who was the first queer person that I ever loved and knew, who is a very, very quiet, fierce lesbian and did not wear anything that would indicate that, as far as like pride symbols or such. And yeah, I just think that it's also like one thing I wanted to convey is this sense of how deep and personal that connection is, and that it's not just the stuff we have. And a lot of us don't have access to stuff anyway, even though I love stuff. So.
And I'll say, and by the way, I apologize now. I'm going to have to leave right after this. Sorry about that, but I think the most important thing that I feel that we should come to this and come to everything in our community is an openness to hear and learn about differences, an openness to change our views. That, you know, we should not be static, and we should not be grounded in cement or stone. You know, our community, I think, I have very favorable views about our community. I think it's a great community. But that doesn't say that we get it right all the time. What's more important is that we try to get it right. And so I think there's an attitude that we want to encourage among all of us in the community. And that's the attitude to listen and to be adaptable and to change.
Thank you.
And with that, I apologize. I'm sorry. I've got a 7:30 and I'm going to be a couple minutes late anyway, but anyway. Nice being with you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate all
Hi,
of
Ron. We're going to just switch interpreters again.
All right, so I'm kind of just going to connect these two questions. What is the first step someone could take to peacefully respond to hate against the community? And just kind of as a two-parter, what can someone do as an ally to make you feel loved and heard and wanted? So that's a double one.
I think, especially as like a trans non-binary person, going the extra mile to really try to implement my pronouns, like learn about the grammar of they them pronouns, how to correct yourself and not make it that big of a deal, to really know that just because like messing up might not be that big of a deal, that pronouns are required. Even if someone might use like a binary pronoun and a they them pronoun, asking them like, what do you prefer? Is it okay if I interchange them? That kind of stuff. Because I used to go by she they pronouns, and I was always like, I felt super supported when people would ask me if I preferred one or the other. So I think really asking people, what are they comfortable with? How can you make them feel safe is really important as an ally.
Does anyone else want to speak to that? Thank you so much, Chloe.
I agree like with everything Chloe said. It's like, you know, fellow like trans non-binary person. I think the whole pronoun education is important. And then another thing, going back to what Chloe said a couple questions ago about like being a global educator, especially as like kind of like a unicorn person like myself. I feel like anytime I introduce myself, people are expecting me to lead them on a lecture on any one of my given identities. And it's almost like spinning a wheel to see which one I'm going to be lecturing about on that particular day. And so just knowing that even though, like, yeah, it's great that you're an ally. It's great that maybe I'm the first like Black trans person you've ever met, or I'm the first like African, like non-binary person or whatever. Doesn't mean at that moment I want to go in depth and talk to you about it and like share all of my opinions about my life and my struggles, because I find that that's a lot of things people ask me. They'll be like, oh, it must be so hard, like I'm so sorry, like you struggle so much, like, and these kind of things. And so maybe you just want to, I tell you these things, I tell you them just as something to know about me, but you like, I'm not ready to go deeper every single time, you know. It's not basic conversation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I can probably answer this one, and anyone can piggyback. Just what are ways for people who are involved in organizing? What is the best way for students to get involved in activism for queer rights and other causes? Just real quick, Youth for Unity is we're doing stuff. So if you want to join in on the ride, please do. You're welcome here. And so we're not only do we want to fundraise for causes and do protests, because I'm all for protests, like that's the first step. I'm really, really into making change. And that's change that's put into legislation, that's put into action, that's actually going to change people's lives. I think there's a lot of performative stuff going on, like, and I'm guilty of this too. You know, posting something on your story and being like, I did it, I'm good. And yeah, I mean, thank you, that's cool. But there's something in, we need to touch people's lives now. And we're not going to do that necessarily by just holding a protest. We're going to do that by, we're holding a protest and these are the things that we want, and we're going to hold people accountable for that. So yeah, if you want to get involved, youth4unity.com there, and our Instagram is Youth for Unity, but there's so many other ways out there in order to get involved. If anybody else wants to speak to that.
I just want to take a moment to say that for almost any young person that has contacted me, which happens frequently, looking for, like, I want to learn more about what's going on around racial justice. I want to understand what's happening around reproductive rights. I feel curious, I feel nervous, I feel excited, I feel like fired up. And they're from this area, I'm directing them to Youth for Unity because you all are doing the work. And I will tell you all, this is the most planning I have ever done for like a Wednesday night virtual rainbow room. We've done a lot of planning for something like the prom, but for like just a virtual program, these are some of the most organized, supportive, loving, forgiving, accountable, like, we're going to call each other on our shit. We're going to call each other in. We're going to talk about what works. I mean, it's really actually phenomenal. And it's not just about like changing the systems. It also brings so much. And I see that happen. I see the love and the connection that happens. And this absolutely also happens at the Rainbow Room. In fact, thinking about the youth that planned the prom and the coming together that we did there and the meals that we ate and the text exchanges that we've had. And so this is not just about making a better world, but about reclaiming these little pieces of our own humanity. And one of the things that we lose as being in an oppressor group, so being a white person in a system of white supremacy, which is very much the system and the culture that we live in the United States, is that my own humanity as a white person is trashed in that process, because there's no way you can be fully human and have that kind of access and unearned power over other people, over their bodies, over their lives, over their healthcare. I mean, it's really horrific. And so this work also uplifts and helps certainly people that are marginalized and oppressed, but it also brings back our own humanity. And the same is true for allies of the LGBTQ community and for men who are working as, you know, around feminism. So it's really, I just wanted to also go back to that. Then I started talking about other stuff, but really honor the hard work and the loving attention that the youth leaders of Youth for Unity are involved with. I think I'm on like a text thread with like, I don't even know how many of you are on that, but feels like there's like 100 of you. And they're like, they're real, they're honest, they're friendly, they're loving, they're serious, they're like grappling with stuff. And it's just amazing. And it's how we're going to get through these times. So thank you all for just the hard, incredibly hard work you've done every single step of the way. Okay, done with my little spiel.
Well, I just want to thank you, Marlene, because you've literally done so much. Okay, Marlene and Sarah, they took the lead on this and they did so well. Like, there are just so many people that I want to thank for this. There's Marlene, there's Sarah, there's Cindy and Lynn for being the interpreters. There's James for showing up during work at Evolution. Like, it's just so amazing that so many people came up to support me and everyone else. It's just really beautiful. So give yourself credit, Marlene, because you're doing amazing, sweetie.
Yeah, that's really important that we look at everyone here. And I know for me and everyone here, if you feel like you don't have a place to go and you feel lonely or that you're different, you're loved here. You have a group of 51 people plus that are here for you and that love you. And that's really, really important to know. I'm gonna, I think, close that out, and we're gonna transfer that to Marlene, and she's gonna talk about the Rainbow Room discussion for our 14 to 21-year-olds. Thank you so much.
Right on. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Immediately when we realized we had way more questions, we were like, I think Sarah was like, let's do another one. So we definitely want to do this again.